Hi, my name's Graham Hooper. I'm co-managing director of Tri-Coaching Partnership. And I would like to thank Carly and the DIA for launching Motormouth. I'm one of the panellists or the debaters. I will be throwing some lumps of red meat into the ring to get that debate going. And I'm looking forward to you all joining in with Motormouth. But I'd like to tell you a little bit about On Point. Tri-Coaching Partnership Limited has developed On Point webinars. They are going to be run twice monthly. The first one starts on February the 13th. It's around mock testing, presented by Susan McCormack, author of Practical Teaching Skills for Driving Instructors, a recommended read by the DVSA. She will also then be presenting another On Point around assessment, and then myself will be doing lesson planning and risk management. So if you want to book these bite-sized chunks of CPD at a bite-sized price, go to our website, www.try-coachingpartnership.co.uk, and I'll either see you on Motormouth or On Point, because they're going to be on point. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Chris Bensted from the Driving Instructor and Trainers Collective, theditc.co.uk, signposting point for the industry, where you can come to find information that you're not sure where to look for it. That's what we do. I am also a specialist theory trainer, and I run Theory Test Explained, supporting your pupils who are struggling with the theory test, helping them to understand the way the test works and the questions, have the knowledge, be able to pass, and then help stop them holding you up because they can't book or take their practical test. So that's what I do. If you want to find me via theditc.co.uk or hit me up on Facebook and we can have a chat. Thank you.
Good evening, everybody, and thank you for joining us again on the second episode of DIA Motormouth, the programme where we get to grips with some of the hot topics in the industry and have a good verbal ruck about some of the issues. Now, joining me today, I have some well-known faces or well-known names in the industry who are equally as opinionated as I am on some of the topics we're going to discuss, but way more knowledgeable of the actual practice than I admittedly am. So joining me today, I have Graham Hooper, one of our regular panellists, Chris Bensted, and special guest, John Farlam. So I'm going to go over to John first to give him a chance to get some words in before Graham starts to introduce himself.
Good evening, everybody. It's great to be here. For those who don't know me, if there's anybody who don't know me, I'm possibly the grandfather, or one of the grandfathers of the industry. I think of the ex-chairman at the ADRJ, and one or two others that are older than me, but and have trained many is correct, as Graham will attest, many of the leading players in the industry as well have found a way through my hands over the years. I'm currently building a driving school called Drive with my colleagues, and we're now the fastest growing school. We've got getting on for about 200 cars, and we've been going about 10 months. So I'm quite pleased with the progress of that. My main thing is being opinionated about trainer training and driving instructor training. I started doing this in the early 90s. I looked at everything that was out there and thought I'll steal all the best bits. There were no best bits, so I've made it up as I've gone along and ignored the industry ever since. So that's just about me.
I'm going to let Chris go next, so he equally has an opportunity to get some words in before we go into the monologue, which is Graham Hooper.
He's going to do it like 3 words now, just to prove a point.
Just to be stubborn.
I'm Chris Bensted. I haven't been an ADI nearly as long as the others in the room, but still, I think going on 15 years now, and I've had the pleasure of getting involved in lots of different things. Most recently, we launched the Driving Instructor and Trainers Collective as a signposting point for the industry to try and help people find information and to find the key players that everyone speaks about, which aren't always as easy to find. So I do that, and in the rest of my time, I'm an ADI without a car, because I don't have a tuition vehicle. I'm specialising in theory training. So that's really interesting and something that we should all be doing more of.
Graham.
Well, good evening, everyone. I'm Graham Hooper, co-managing director of Tri-Coaching Partnership Limited. Danny said I could have 5 words, but I never do what I was told anyway. I met John for the first time in a car park in Knock. But there's another story to go with that. He don't want me to tell that.
That's not a lyric. I'm expecting so much more from this.
It involved changing a tyre.
Yeah, yeah. So
I know.
anyway, yeah. So I know both John and Chris very well, and of course Carly. Yeah, we have a lot to bring you tonight. And I Tri Coaching Partnership #1 training provider of continued professional development in the UK, currently to ADIs. So we can have a good evening.
And good evening to the rest of you from myself. If you don't know who I am already, I'm Carly Brookfield. I'm the Chief Executive of the DIA Group, which obviously includes DIA, the largest professional membership for driver and rider trainers in the United Kingdom, and also Diamond Advanced Motorists, one of the globally respected providers of advanced driver and rider training and accreditation. So I'm going to get straight into the debate tonight with you guys. We're here to take apart, reassemble, make it better, how we train the trainers. Arguably a crucial part of road safety, because if we don't get the people who train the pupils to the right standard and learning the right things and able to deliver that learning to our pupils, be they fleet or 17-year-olds or whatever, then we are arguably going to see a lowering of road safety issues and a hiring of standards in terms of driving standards. So I think it's absolutely appropriate that we look at that entry into the industry, how we train people, and then how we develop people, post qualification, so they keep on learning. Because as someone who pays for learning, either for my daughter when she starts to learn, God help us, or paying for any training product, I expect the trainer to have a great level of knowledge already, but be developing that knowledge as time goes on as well, which is the argument obviously for CPD. So I'm going to kick off with arguably the egg side of things, or the chicken and egg debate is, what we've got as an entry criteria for ADIs at the moment. Is that robust enough, or should we be asking more of people entering the industry? And one of the reasons I think this is quite a pertinent thing to discuss right now is when I met with DVSA the other week in Bristol with the rest of NASP, one of the set statistics that they gave us is that they're looking at 40% more entrants and applications to the industry than 2019. Now, normally what they see after something like a recession or a pandemic, the Black Swan event that we've just had, they will always have increased demand as people think about changing professions, but that normally recedes after a while as people get back into the normal scheme of things. But interestingly, this time, post-COVID, that interest hasn't waned. So we're seeing a continued interest in entering the industry. So now more than ever is a time to get it right in terms of who we let in and what we do with them once they're in. So I'm going to go to you, John, first. Do you think we should change the criteria for people coming into the industry, or is it just about right, in your opinion?
There are two issues. One is pre-training. Should we vet people? For example, you can't be an ADI unless you've got 4 O levels or whatever that happens to be. And to the actual qualification criteria. 4 O levels, Graham?
I got asked to leave school, John. That's why I'm laughing.
I left school when I was 14. Nothing. Take them in turn. The first one, should we have preconditions? Currently, I'm not sure that we should. I look at Norway and I look at different systems. What is it, 3 years university in Norway, Graham, or thereabouts? I'm not sure. I'm not sure about that. I'm not sure that I've seen some fantastic ADIs develop from people who could, dare I say, barely read and write, but that had excellent people skills, came on to be excellent sort of counsellors and trainers. And I'd be reluctant to say to those people, you can't do it because you haven't got your 4 O levels or whatever. I wouldn't be able to do it because I don't have any school type. I've got lots of qualifications, but not from way back there, not those sort of basic qualifications. So that's one point. But what I would say is there should be minimum. I mean, if a company is going to sell a course to somebody, there should be minimum levels of information that's got to be supplied. There's far too much what I call bogus sales go on, which attract vulnerable people who are never going to qualify anyway. If we then move on to the actual qualification itself, I think as a starting point, it's great. A lot of people will disagree with me on that. The score of 32 to qualify against a current standard check, but it's like a learner driver passes a driving test. They pass a driving test with 5 faults, 10 faults, whatever. They're not perfect. They're demonstrating that they can go on to their next phase of learning without supervision. But it's been found that learners in various states do better when there are conditions for the first 12 months of holding a license. And what we need is a system where there are conditions for the first 12 months or 2 years of holding an ADI license. Because although even qualifying with a basic score of 32, which is pretty, I'm not allowed to say things like piss ball on here, but if I was allowed to say that, that's how I would describe it.
I didn't hear you.
No, Carly's apologising for my language. Even though that's not very good, it's good enough to start. as long as we know there's going to be more input and more development. And I think that's the level where the biggest change could be made at the moment, that post-qualification period, whether it be 6 months, 1 year, ideally 2 years. I think, we have a 2 years model with the driving test at the moment. You pass your driving test, you get 6 points in 2 years, you go back to the beginning. 2 years is a quite established figure. I think you get your ADI license, you should be expected, if you scored 32, say, on the qualification test, 8 months down the line, you should be expected to score a minimum of 36 or 38, until and the level for ADIs generally after the 1 month, 1 year, 2 year, whatever that arbitrary period would be, needs to go up maybe to 38 or 40. Because for standards checks ongoing, I don't think that 32 is anywhere near good enough.
Yeah, interesting.
I've got to agree with John to a certain degree. I don't think we have to be academics to start with, otherwise that's probably written 3 of us out from this panel. But what I think we have to remember is that, generally speaking, we're practitioners. We're not academics, we're practitioners, so we need to be able to do it in a practical sense. Yeah. But I also think that there needs to be like graduated driving licenses. You need, if you want to move up the scale and become, say for argument's sake, a trainer, then you need to do some CPD that is recognised to move you up the scale, so that
that's what I just wrote down when John was talking about
the knowledge and understanding to be able to educate. And what we've got currently is a system that doesn't work, because when ADIs do pass with 31 or 32, that's it. We've never got more than 10% probably doing CPD, never. Now, there's a difference also between CPD and standard check training. Standard check training is not CPD, it's test focused. And we have to get out of this test focused mode that we've been stuck in for ever and ever. And you know why we're stuck in it? Because our lords and masters are test focused, because that's all they know. And so we're very difficult to break the system, because humans want to pass tests.
A while back, there was a system of, do a bit of an assessment, a profile of looking at whether you're suited to be an instructor. And it was slated because it was, much as John said, why should we be told that we can't? Because there's plenty of people that are not academic that have ended up being brilliant trainers. So, but maybe there's actually a system there where it gets people going into a funnel, and then it takes them through more realistic understanding of what's expected of doing the job. So maybe, yes, we're not looking at academic skills, but if you've got good communication skills, you're likely to be a better trainer. So maybe there's a system in which it can look at the assets that we do need. Maybe we're looking at the wrong ones to start with, that it's not academic skills that are necessarily the important ones. And that if we can identify people with those good skills, and through that journey say to them, okay, this is what's likely to happen. This is the minimum standard that you start with, but you're expected to move forwards. That gives us that opportunity, because at the moment there isn't one. And the ADIs and pre-PDIs and PDIs that I speak to are all saying there's not enough information out there as you're coming in. From that point. So if there was here's an assessment that you can go through totally free, just fill it in, and then it will give you feedback, and we can actually, through as few as 3 questions, identify people's personality traits. We can suggest to them good and bad strengths and weaknesses that might be. We can look at improving them through that, which is then a feed through to CPD.
Yeah, and I think if you look at other vocational areas, there are mainly it's the private training providers in those places, or the private companies who run their own training programs to bring people in to work for them. They will actually do a kind of pre-screening day where they'll bring people in to, and I don't want to ally the skills and the profession too closely. The analogies about the training process. In cabin crew, I believe that they have these days where they bring you in and they do things like that. They throw you into some tasks, and it's about weeding out who is going to make it through the training process and who is suitable for the provider who may recruit them, as much as it is for the person to understand what the job is actually about in reality. So if people can have some opportunity to be exposed to that, then that might help the more focused people who are more capable stay with the process and come through, rather than people being sucked in generally by very attractive franchise advertising and sold a dream and sold that they can be in that dream and they've got a place in it, and then we find out it can turn into a nightmare for both the franchisor and the franchisee.
And what's different there is that the people that are employed, you're trying to find the best asset for your company. Actually, when you're paying the company for the position, it then becomes much more difficult, and it's less likely for people to turn around and say, actually, you're not what we want, because an underachieving ADI is more likely to stay with the franchise model.
Yep.
So it works against itself.
And it's really hard to say to people that, you know, don't waste your money, because you are not going to be successful in this process. And it is a lot of money to people. It's not just the money, it's the time aspect, because a lot of people will juggle it a long time alongside a full-time job whilst they do it as well. John?
As we've been speaking, I've just been digging out online on a different screen over here. It's now on the Safe Driving for Life website, but driving instructor suitability assessment. And I'm not familiar with it. I was familiar with the old one, which was on the DVSA or the .gov site, which was really very poor in terms of, you know, you'll have to work very long hours, and you'll have to work at weekends, and you'll have to work evenings, and all the, like they were trying to put people off. This is a 20-question questionnaire, and I haven't been through it, and I'm not going to go through it as I'm concentrating on what.
Only because you fail it anyway.
But well, I failed. I've got the first two wrong. You know, can an ADI earn 50,000 a year? And I put yes, because I know it's true, but that's just my opinion. Do you think most ADIs earn 50,000 a year? Not a hope. I would have thought. No, but there is a questionnaire on there now. It looks as though it might be a little bit better than the last effort, but I suspect it won't be that much better. But you might want to check that out and have a look at some point.
I think if you take it forward even further, I mean, you know, even if we do filter people in, we have to change the testing process. Yeah, part 1, part 2, part 3. I know because I've spent most of my career rescuing people who fail, because they do their part 1 theory, can't remember anything because they passed a test, and humans, when they pass a test and they're not using it, don't need to use it anymore. They do their driving test, their part 2, they pass their driving test. They don't need to use that anymore. So slowly they go back to where they were when they joined. So now they come to teach their part 3. They don't know anything and can't drive. I'm being a bit harsh there, but it's very, very true. When I come to, you know, sorting out the mess that I'm given when they failed 2 attempts, the reason they failed the 2 attempts is because their knowledge is poor. I think it's been test focused, and their driving is poor because it's been forgotten.
I don't think this is something. I agree exactly with the way you're going from. I've been through the process. I started the first check test rescue service in the north of England years and years ago, and I was a forerunner there, and coined the term rescue. So I know exactly the background of the people that come to you, particularly for part 3. I understand it fully, but I don't think you can lay that down to the testing process or the DVSA. I think that's just down to the training process. That people are taught part 1. Yep. And part 2 and part 3. They're not taught an integrated syllabus.
Absolutely.
There are very few companies and very few people that I know in this industry that teach a fully integrated syllabus. So you're learning about part 3 at part 1, and that process continues through part 2. And then there's more incentive, for example, as you say, Graham, to remember stuff, because it's integrated. It's not a memory test anymore. We're not trying to remember the answer to questions. We're gaining good sound knowledge, a good knowledge base. When it comes to driving, we understand why we're doing it. We're not just doing it because this is what you've got to do for the tests. And so I think that's where the problem lies. And that's why the people help you get such a good living out of rescue training.
Well, I think, John, my living comes from Tri Coaching Instructor Training Ticket, which is a fully integrated program. You know, fortunately.
I did say there are very few people I know.
Yeah, and you know, I know Chris has done our trainer course, and he was quite amazed at the value, the added value which is in it. He thinks it's far too cheap, so I'm going to put prices up.
I can see why you were never a salesman, Graham.
Yeah, I know, I was rubbish at it, John.
Yeah. Never a marketeer.
Yeah, no good at it.
Going back to that piece, because I think it's quite an important one to capture and focus on for a moment here, is that's the point. That's the problem, isn't it? There's far too much focus on the testing of whether knowledge is acquired. There's nowhere near the focus on what is the process to acquire the knowledge and how we're doing that. There is, and we discussed this earlier. We've got the same blight in learning to drive as we have in training trainers who train those who learn to drive. We don't have a curriculum. We have a set of testing goals that we then expect people to just make up their own stuff to get them to. And it's not about telling people how to run their businesses as trainers. It's about ensuring consistency. If we just let everybody do what they want, then go figure that we have this mixed bag of both, you know, kind of quantity and quality and what's actually delivered. Now, we want people to innovate. We want client-centered learning. By no means am I saying let's set a curriculum that eradicates that ability to innovate, client-centered learn, all that kind of stuff. But we're expecting people to, you know, actually just do the knowledge acquisition bit, and then the DVSA comes in and tests whether that's been done. And isn't that the problem, that we're not really looking at that knowledge acquisition process and making that the priority?
I think totally. Just on the curriculum side, I mean, there is a car for drivers. There's a car and light van driving syllabus, which is okay, but it doesn't connect to anything. It's out there. Most ADI don't know it exists, and there's no integration. It doesn't figure.
And the regulator doesn't promote it. It doesn't say to PDIs, when you come into this world, this is here's the national standards that you have to deliver on.
Yeah.
Here's the national standards that you have to get your clients to. And, and here is the curriculum that we have designed, because they haven't, we know that, but in an ideal world, here is the curriculum that we have designed that is portable, and we don't tell you to follow it to the letter, but it's a great framework for you to build your training around.
And that's a great point. My guess is that the people who are attending this session tonight will be people who are interested, people who want to do well, people who want to move forward in the industry. And I'd almost bet, I won't put a figure, but I would bet that there would be at least one person watching this tonight who'd never heard of the car and light van syllabus, because that's out of the educated, if you like, out of the good guys.
And having worked within the medical arena, worked at the worst end of it, medical indemnity, so dealing with doctors who'd done the wrong things, and then financial services, it's an anathema in a way that you basically say to people with something so critical as either people's money, their safety on the road, or their medical safety. You just go off and do what you want, and then send them us to test and then license. And if they think it's great, that's brilliant. And I'm not demeaning people who've been through that process. What I'm saying is, it could be so much better if the DVSA, or not the DVSA, because my opinion is, and I'm very clear on this, I don't think DVSA should be the body responsible for training of ADIs. I think you need a different body to look at that, and ADIs would then go with their qualification from that body, and it can be a mixed bag of providers, so there's choice, and that creates competition, which hopefully raises standards. But DVSA then just gives people the license. And it's not working as it is because there's no development of the curriculum by the regulator.
You see, Carly, the standards and the syllabus are there. There is nothing really wrong with the standards and syllabus. It's good. It comes out of the standards comes out of the goals for driver education. All of those reports going back to Gadget, Merit, Hermes, even RU, CACA, all that overriding stuff. It's all there. It is all good stuff. What should be happening, really, I suppose, is that training courses need to be accredited.
Yes.
They need to be licensed and say this is fit for purpose. Trainers maybe need to be licensed and say that they're fit for purpose as well, because the skill level for a trainer has to be higher than the skill level for an ADI. Otherwise, where do ADIs go?
And to some extent, modernising driver training looked at that, because it was abdicating responsibility is the wrong word, because it's a positive thing they were doing. It was delegating responsibility for the training process to a system of, kind of awarding body, external verifiers, internal verifiers. So you had much better quality assurance, planned. Doesn't necessarily mean it's going to have any practice, but at least there was the idea that you would have an awarding body who would set the curriculum and the training regime. You could, as an independent trainer or a driving school, apply to be accredited by that awarding body. And then you could train under that, so they would look after the quality. So we could avoid some of the things, hopefully, like PDIs being ripped off by unscrupulous trainers or not getting delivery of what they paid for. But then people would simply take their license to DVSA and say, I've qualified, give me the license. And that is the real shame for me coming into the industry at that time, when we were all in those working groups, and we had great people like John spoke about tonight, Ian Holden, who were very passionate about making this change. And then it just got put on a shelf, and it's become the child that we don't speak about, other than when I raise it, because I like speaking about that child. One, because I think it's a really important topic, and two, because it has become the child we don't speak about. And I like making people, kind of uncomfortable.
And that is a really big shelf in this industry, because there's lots of stuff on it that doesn't seem to happen. And I think one of the biggest problems is that your qualification to become a driving instructor is having a driving license. And that's, why people start looking at it as an opportunity, because I've got a license, therefore I can be a driving instructor. And they discover along the way, often through a number of mistakes, which is how we learn best, but they can be really costly ones. And then there's an assumption that that same badge that they've achieved by having a driving license makes them a good trainer. And at the moment, particularly, it's interesting that there's, with the high figures of people becoming PDIs, there's a lot of instructors out there who would never have dreamt of training another instructor because they're busy. They think, right, I need to get someone else on board, and they want someone who works their way, and they'll do it themselves because they're qualified to. But qualified and experienced are two different things. And we continue that pattern. It's not just becoming a trainer, to train at ADIs. We do the same thing with any other different category or any other niche. It tends to be, I've got an ADI badge, therefore I can do it, and that experience gets lost. Yet we value that when we're promoting ourselves and what we do. Interestingly, there's a lot of PDIs that are coming through that are better qualified and more savvy about things, the national standards and such, than the ADIs that have been doing the job for 15, 20 years.
And interestingly, we have had a comment about that, asking, one of the delegates has asked, what does the panel think of the standard of current ADIs who've been in the industry for 15, 20 years?
I have been in the industry longer than 20 years are far better. Hi, John.
Those who've been in longer than 40 years are probably really good.
Or 30 years.
I don't think it's fair. I could slag off ADIs who were happily to bump along the bottom to go for a standard check, fail it, go back, have another go, scrape through it, bump along for another 2 years or however long the shortest gaps are these days, probably 4 years. Fail it again, come back again, scrape through it, do a course with somebody like Graham or whoever, or Chris or whoever's going to. And I think this is atrocious. Now, I think they're a minority. I think more than that, there are a whole bunch of well-meaning driving instructors, guys with a good heart, guys who would be horrified to think they were doing a bad job, but who've never been. It's never been a habit in this industry of people to naturally go along to training courses and to improve your skills. Now, the other side of that is as well is a lot of instructors have had such a tough time with their training organisations when they set out that they're not going to be. They've been let down. They're not going to be inspired to go for more of the same. So we have as a whole, we have an industry where there are probably, and I could probably dig out a database and give you their names, but we probably have 1,500 to 2,000 ADIs who are assiduously read stuff, study stuff, go on courses, probably another 7,000 or 8,000 who read magazines and stuff when they come out, and 10 to 20,000 that do bugger all.
I think also, Carly, I'm going to put this to you. Look, this is about, in some respects, about CPD. Associations promote their own CPD. I've always believed that associations should promote all CPD, maybe vet it.
Which we do. You've had a lot of
no, absolutely, maybe, but I'm not talking just,
I know.
as an industry, vet it, and so that ADIs and PDIs know. They don't, you started off mentioning about there's no information out there. Well, sometimes there's no information out there because we keep it all secret.
I totally agree with you that, being a CPD provider ourselves, we will, like you, we'll, if we develop anything new, we'll make sure that we really research it, that we get our trainers properly trained and accredited. We go for third-party accreditation, like yourselves as well. And we do all of that work. And then sometimes we just find that's completely ripped off by some guy the next day or another association who has watched one of our training sessions and, now can just go off and deliver that because they think it's a money maker. And they haven't been through the rigor of the trainer process. They haven't been through the accreditation process to do the providing. But if you're sat there looking at things on Facebook advertising or in a forum and other people are recommending it, you don't necessarily see the difference between those things. And that's beholden to us to make a better education of why that rigor is important. But equally, we need organisations like DVSA to give more guidance around CPD and what does good look like. We're going to move on to CPD in a moment because we're going to look at post qualification, developing standards, developing competency. But John touched on it there. There are a lot of PDIs who come into this industry who have got what it takes, and haven't been given the opportunity because they haven't had the right training process, and they haven't had the right trainer. So going back to the kind of chicken and egg situation, if we haven't got the quality of trainers right, so we talked about we probably haven't got the training process right, and I'll nip back to that in a moment because we're going to talk about what should be in the qualification process that isn't at the moment to really set people up for a training career and driver training. But what should we do about trainers? Because ORDIT's not as robust and respected as it should be. The criteria to be a trainer on ORDIT is not necessarily where it should be. Some people are very good trainers, but they're not on ORDIT because they don't particularly respect that register. What can we do about that? And what does a good trainer look like in your opinion?
Ooh. Well, currently, I was like thinking about this as a trainer, and I'm running a trainer course tomorrow, which is fully sold out, so you can't get on it. Sorry. I think experience really does count a lot. I remember when I did my first PDI training session. Someone phoned me up and said, "Can you train me to be a driving instructor?" And I say yes. Yeah. And they come round and they get in the car, and I repeated the same crap training I was given to them. And I got out the car at the end of it, and I thought, what have I just done? I know my training was rubbish. I knew it was rubbish when I got it, because I ignored it all and did it all myself and did very well and passed them all first time. And then someone comes along, I don't know any different. And I thought, oh, I'll repeat the training. And so what I did, and I went to university for 2 years and got a teaching qualification, because I felt that if I was going to train adults to teach people, to learn and to educate, it might be a good idea that I know how to do it myself. So I put in those hard yards, which my wife wasn't very pleased about, attending night school and that sort of stuff while still working. But I gained that qualification, gained that understanding, wrote my first driving instructor training course while I was there, which absolutely educated me. Writing the course was my education. And then, have grown from there, gone back to university again. So becoming a trainer, I think if you're going to be a trainer, if you're not prepared to invest in your CPD, then you shouldn't be a trainer, because that's what we're asking people to do.
Yeah,
that's interesting, because invest in your CPD doesn't necessarily mean invest lots of money in your CPD.
Yeah.
It means invest time and effort. Simple example: sitting in the back of driving tests. You can learn more sat in the back of a driving test than you can almost anywhere else. And being selective about not just going to Facebook, to different groups, to WhatsApp groups, to social media generally, and because somebody says something, take it on board. As, oh yeah, that's a good idea, I'll do that. Listen to it, try it out, find out what's good about it and what's bad about it, because it won't all be good. I mentioned earlier that when I started out with ADI training, I had a good break with a company called Learner Driving Centres, where I was a director, and I had 40 trainers who all knew more than I did, and I was like their boss and their trainer. And I decided, at least they all thought, and I thought they knew more than I did. And my ploy was to go and see what was stealable out there. Buy the BSM course, buy this course, buy that course, see what was, take all the best bits. There were no best bits. I had to build from scratch. I had to start and build, and that was a great education for me. But it was a totally intense and immersive experience. I put my heart and soul into that, not for 3 months, not for 4 months, for about 15 years, probably, to really understand stuff inside out. And the arrogance of people, this is one thing that frustrates me, the arrogance of people, and not only in this industry, but particularly in this industry, of people who think they've got this qualification, so they know it all. No, you don't. 43 years on, I will learn something this evening. I will learn something tomorrow. 43 years on, I'm still learning.
Yeah, exactly.
And a good trainer needs that mindset.
And in any business, you're always learning. And if you don't think you're always learning, that's when you're going to make the biggest, kind of mistakes and take the biggest risks. Chris, a quick fire one to you. And also the rest of you can input on it. With ORDIT, should we make it obviously better? But if we make it better, should it be mandatory? And what is going to make it better? Do you think saying that people have to have some form of trainer qualification? You can't just go from being an ADI, running a driving school for a bit, and then saying, I'm going to impart my vast knowledge I've gained over the last year to other people and charge them a lot of money for it.
I love your quick fire. So I don't think we can do it without making it compulsory in some way, because the voluntary doesn't work. Unless we can deliver a standard at which people have got to keep to it to be there, which is then head and shoulders above. And there's too many people will say that, oh, it's not worth it. Just trying to get coaching into the industry was fun to watch. And some would argue it's still not there. But I think the biggest issue for me is that, being voluntary, the DVSA are almost trying to use a bit of deception to go, we're going to ask for an audit number, as if that's going to make people, suddenly need. And it's like, well, no, we all know that you don't really need it, but we're going to act as if you do. And
it's
that
like the Monty Python sketch, isn't it? Where the Spanish Inquisition, it's like, get out the pointy cushions or whatever it is. Ask for the audit number. Nobody's really truly scared of it, are they?
but the people it does panic are the wrong ones. It's the people that are taking the test who at the beginning of their test get asked for something they haven't necessarily got, and then that destroys them. And that's not beneficial. I think that the thing for me that I got introduced to Ted Lasso. If anyone hasn't seen it, it's a really good series. And the Whitmore quote of "Be curious, not judgmental," is my approach to the industry. I'm not bothered about the everyone slating everyone else bit or is it bad or worse. It's let's go and discover what it's about, and as John said, every time you're going to learn, there's always going to be a benefit from that. And the difference between the ADI teaching a learner, where it is a set skill that actually, if we could put them in a sandbox and they could just go and drive the car, they'd learn it anyway. The difference is we should understand as trainers, we should understand learning and the learning process and how that works, and that's far more important. And you don't even, I don't think you even need to necessarily be a driver to be good at that. I think it's about learning and seeing how people grow. As long as you know the outcome, as we'll all say, from a coach perspective, you don't need that expertise. Absolutely. What you do is help someone through it.
Something you said there that triggered me to think, do you think examiners need to understand how learning takes place?
Yeah. Audit examiners or examiners?
John, audit examiners should. Right. Do you think they need to understand how learning takes place?
I think
that see what we're doing.
I think they need to recognise that when a set of skills are being implemented. I suppose that's the same thing. I suppose they do. They should have some understanding, because if they don't understand the mechanics of it, it makes it difficult. I think if you're marking by criteria, you've got to understand something about what's behind that criteria. To what level, I'm not sure. I mean, assessment and education are two very different fields.
That's why I asked the question, John, because they're assessors, they're not trainers.
I mean, you can get assessors that is their job. I'm an assessor. I don't know what I'm going to be assessing next week, but I'll have a set of guidelines to go by, and I'll go and assess it. And if I can tick the boxes, so be it. I wonder how an Ofsted inspector would answer that question.
I think it's a worry for instructors that are going and sitting, a standards check, is that, if I do what I do normally, will they recognise it if they haven't got an understanding of what I do, or will it go under the radar? And it's a worry I had when it first changed. I had the decision of do I go and play the game, or do I deliver my normal lesson, of which I've got a background that includes hypnosis, NLP, and numerous other things, where I will slide things under the radar. Because it'll work, and I know how to, but I don't expect the examiner to know that. So if you're not overt about it, they won't know. Do you mark down? And actually, no, because they're marking it on a minimum criteria anyway.
Chris, what I've discovered in all my years of doing check tests and standards checks for myself is if I just turn up and do it, I actually get top marks. But do I get top marks because I know what I'm doing? I don't really actually need to, and this is the key, I don't really need to know what I'm doing. I remember the first time I got a grade 6 through all the subjects, and he said, well done, you got a grade 6 in the core competencies. And I said, what's the core competencies? Never heard of them. But I've got 6 in all of them, the top marks, because I must have delivered a great driver training lesson. So it's complex, because it's a bit like, does Wayne Rooney need to know the biology aspects of how to kick a football, or does he just do it?
So very, very much agree with that, Graham. I got top marks. Once I remember threatening to throw the examiner out of the car and get him to walk home, not in so many words, a bit more in Chris's under the radar approach, few NLP suggested moves. But another one where I got the learner out of the car and started running towards a T-junction with him. I said to the examiner, do you want to come with us? He said, no, because this guy had been approaching too fast. So I just started scared. I played a little game with him. So we got out of the car and got back in. The examiner said, are you taking the mickey? I said, let's see how he gets on. And I got a top grade after that one. this is one of the things where training is going wrong in this country, to my mind, is everybody is focusing on core competencies rather than on what I would call core skills. And core skills are a different thing from, now the core competencies are an absolutely excellent detailed method and methodology for measuring and observing core skills. But you don't need to know all that stuff. You just need to know how to watch a learner, how to give feedback, how to ask questions, how to be present. You know, these are really the core skills. And if you know those things and you can create readable rapport, and you get a result.
John, you reminded me, I think, I don't know whether you were there when the first round of audit come round and we were all invited to Cardington several times. And they very much said, we don't want you to show what to do, to teach what to do. We want you to teach how to do it. And then it just never happened because the customer wants us generally to tell them what to do. They don't generally want to learn how to do it, which I think they would if they were educated that how to do it is better than what to do. But what happens is we get fear coming about the test. People are frightened of the test, and then they just tell me what to do to pass the test. I don't care. And if they actually learn in the 4 years between tests how to do it, they don't need to know what to do.
I find this interesting and a little baffling because you've made me reflect now, way back, I'm going back over 30 years when I worked in Sussex, and then I was charging like that. I didn't know, but I was the most expensive instructor in the country at that point in time. I didn't know that. It's only in hindsight I realised that. But I just used to get in the car and do my thing with these guys. I didn't, and they used to accept it and they used to enjoy the lessons. I kind of wonder who's not educating the learner. I kind of wonder, and whose job is it to educate the learner? And anybody who's followed me will know I'm not a great DSA apologist. I support the good stuff they do, and I will comment on the bad stuff, and I'll have fights with the registrar and the chief executive or whoever, although I'm backing off that these days. But is it their job, or is it our job as an industry? Is it our job is it driving instructors who should be sitting people, not in a heavy way, but perhaps in a way that, look, we're going to have some fun on these lessons, and this is why we're going to have some fun, and this is how you're going to get killed if you don't do it this way. Let's giggle about it, you know. And it all comes back to our premise tonight: is the trainer training process and the qualification process fit for purpose, and it's like a curate's egg sort of thing. It's good in parts.
Yeah.
You know what sprung, like, two words come into my mind there, and two words which haven't yet been mentioned tonight, and for me is what drives me, most important thing in this industry, and we often don't even mention it: road safety.
Yeah.
I never thought of that.
It's a driver. I mean, you know, at the end of the day, you know, we like to. I hear these stories about, well, once they pass the test, they're not my problem. But actually, would it be scary to hold ADIs accountable? Not accountable, but you know, how many of your clients go on to crash after you've trained them? Just as a matter of recourse, the insurance company surely could do that. Link it to ADI numbers, just so that we could get the feedback. Are we teaching people to crash, or are we teaching people to drive? Actually, we don't blooming well know.
That also goes to how good a business are you running if you don't actually know what happens with your customer once they progress from your training and you're not interested. And the same people who sometimes criticize people for only being bothered about the test, you know, are the same people that I would ask, well, okay, so what do you do that's different? And I assume then, therefore, you follow up with your students 6 months and a year past. And generally, no, they don't do that. And, you know, that is a fairly commercial practice that is often designed for the upsell. Actually, cynically, we follow up with people.
Not just the upsell.
Yeah.
Not just the upsell, Carly, but they're your sales force.
They're your sales force. They're your you want the recommendation, the referral. But also, don't you want to know that what you've done has had a positive impact? So there is the upsell opportunity, which is, you know, how have you done? Oh, you've had a few instances, have you? Listen, if you want to get back in the car, we can go over some of these things. You know, we can do another couple of hours, or some motorway learning, or whatever it is that they've had an issue with. So there's the upsell, and there's the, oh, you're doing fine, are you? That's amazing. Would you mind writing a testimonial? Would you mind doing some marketing for you? I've got a referral scheme that I can put you on, and you can earn something from it, or you can get some rewards from it. But fundamentally, there's that also thing is how ethical are you in terms of being a road safety practitioner if you don't follow up with your people as to how safe they are now they're licensed.
Just stepping back a little bit from that, Graham reminded me of I get incensed when I hear instructors say this. Oh, well, you only start to learn after you pass your test, and you don't get experience till after you pass your test. So what does that? I mean, at least what I will credit the DVSA for is keep having one of the criteria, which is did you encourage your learner to reflect? Because if you're not gaining in-depth experience during your training, what the hell are you going to base your gaining of experience after you've passed that test, that rudimentary test? How's that going to work? And so, and again, it's teaching to test, isn't it?
Yeah, John, I mean, you know that, you know, a lot of our focus is on developing self-evaluation skills in what we do at Tri-Coaching Partnership. You know, ADIs are quite unsure of what self-evaluation skills are, which is actually just simple reflection and giving that process to think about how you are, how you've acted, what you would do differently. I find that those questions are asked just to tick the box and not, you know, what went well, what didn't go so well, how would you do this differently, is not actually, you know, they're great questions, but I find they're not actually used as great questions. They're just used because we invented those questions for people to use, and now they just use it to tick the box at the end of the exam.
It's interesting.
I'm going to focus us back on topics and just focused for the last remaining minutes here. We've discussed a lot around the entry criteria, the quality of trainers, and whether we should look at improving that. The next thing that I would like to look at very quickly, and again, it's a quick fire question, so quick fire answers are expected. You know, what are the glaring gaps in the qualification process? What is the knowledge that ADIs aren't acquiring that you guys think is essential? So if you could only wedge some, you know, 2 or 3 other subjects or topics into ADI training, what would those be if you had your free reign at how we develop the ADI training qualification?
An understanding of how learning happens, and then I'll go straight down the business route rather than the rest of it, which is marketing skills, sales skills, understanding how to actually run a business, because the vast majority of that isn't included in the vast majority of people's training. So, you know, it is having skills like that. You know, there's a brilliant book by Dave Shannon, who's an ADI and bookkeeper, who, you know, it lists it out there. That should be on the recommended reading for all ADIs. Yep. You know, you're coming into it to run a business, and that's how we should tackle it. It is work for yourself, but actually it's more than that, and people don't quite understand that side of things. So you know, I think definitely all the learning stuff is really important, but we often then forget, and that's where people suffer, because they don't survive long enough, successfully enough, to actually develop their CPD into something that they can do something with.
And delegates, please put in the chat what you also would think would be is the missing pieces of the jigsaw in the ADI training process. Graham, just briefly.
I reckon I wrote down, Chris, first words I wrote down, business. I then wrote down diary, because ADIs need a life. Yeah, you need not work-life balance, life-work balance. Become an ADI and get fatter. Yeah, because you sit on your butt all day long and do not become, you know, how to be healthy and survive and not die. Yeah, and yes, and I agree. How learning takes place. Understanding how learning takes place is really, really important if you're going to teach someone something. If you do not understand how learning takes place, then you go in there and go, oh, they're rubbish, they are. They can't do it. And let's sack them off because they're useless. Let's find someone who's easy to teach. Yeah, because we don't understand how learning takes place. So they're the 3 things for me in a nutshell: business, diary / lifestyle, learning, because ADIs deserve better.
Going back to the chat, obviously one of the delegates has pointed out that there are quite a lot of free business courses that are offered by things like Chamber of Commerce, local authorities. Not that local authorities themselves are great at running businesses, but sometimes they do offer them, and other business enterprise units. So absolutely, I would suggest people tap into those. However, if you're training people to go into a business that you know is a business, I think that should be part of the qualification process. You know, a lot of the problems that we even see at complaints and investigations, you know, is about people not being able to deal with complaints in their own business, and they escalate. And the same thing, by the way, happened with doctors. You know, why we were defending doctors in cases, not always because they took the wrong kidney out. It was actually how they reacted to an issue when there was an issue, and how it escalated from that point. But definitely, I point people to in a lack of business training by proxy in the qualification. Absolutely take advantage of all of those courses that are out there. But I would definitely gun for business training, and we're not just talking about marketing, we're talking about how to put that solid foundation in which to build a business, and realizing that you're running a business and you're going to have to spin several plates, and how do you do that efficiently, would be absolutely kind of pivotal. John, what are your thoughts on where the gaps are?
Very interesting. The business one, I'm with you all on that, but not fully. I mean, customer care skills and all that stuff. A lot of people who are going to franchise and are happy to work on a franchise. There are certain business skills they're never going to need. Well, my thought, interestingly, prompted by Chris earlier, something Chris said earlier. I also, way back in the 90s, did lots of NLP and stuff, and it was one of the first accredited NLP trainers in the UK. Although I never actually, and I could have made a lot of money, never did. I stuck with this business. But communication skills training. Just one of the things, I don't know if they're still available, but I'd often say to people, go off and do something like an introduction to counselling course, 6-week evening class course, and or if you volunteer for something like the Samaritans or similar charity, you get your volunteering time back in learning. You learn about questions, you learn about people, you learn most of all about listening, because one of the most lacking skills is listening. That's either because people are so busy teaching, they're either listening with the ears or what I would call whole body listening, with the eyes, with a intuit, So I think I've got a couple more things here, but I know we're short on time. So I think some kind of, if you want to invest in yourself, invest in your communication skills.
Yeah. And I think, anything around my two penny with I absolutely agree with the rest of the panel here on what you said so far. The only additional things and subjects I would look at are risk management and understanding of the principles of risk management more widely than just driver risk, because that is one of the areas that comes up weakest in standards checks, and understanding of what risk is, how to mitigate it, how to manage it, and how to, kind of analyze risk. So that would be a big part of it for me. Safeguarding. The number of people that I talk to across professions, that are from teaching to legal practitioners to financial, who absolutely just assume that you guys as training professionals have had safeguarding training and that it's compulsory. And when you tell them that it's not, they're like, how is that even allowed? Because teachers and various other vocational trainers have to have that in place. And a DBS check is not teaching somebody how to not do something. And the number of situations where I'll sit in an investigation, an interview under conduct with DVSA, and it's not ignorance is not an excuse. I agree with DVSA completely on that. However, it is total ignorance on the part of that guy, and they are mystified that what they were doing was inappropriate. That if they'd had the training, we'd at least have mitigated the risk of them not knowing and them carrying on doing that thing. And I think education is a massive risk mitigant. So the more we can educate people, the ex-registrar, not the current one, and me would often clash because she didn't agree. It was the role of a regulator to educate. But if you actually look at, and I'm going to say it, more enterprising and more forward-looking regulators, they do a lot of educational outreach work, because they do realise that if you educate people, you will reduce risk, because you'll give them knowledge, and then you'll reduce the ignorance factor as well. If only so you can take the excuse away from people that they didn't know something. So safeguarding would definitely be one. Absolutely agree with communication skills as well. And I think this would probably come under what you were talking about, how people learn, would be a wider understanding of the diverse needs of people. So neurodiversity and all of those things, because we have this massive focus on client-centered learning, and it keeps being said, but we're not necessarily giving people the understanding and the tools and the strategies to be able to deliver on that diversity of clients as well. So that'll be my two pennyworth on top of yours as well. Can I just
ask a question about what we're going to do about chat, because I can't multitask and answer the chat questions and the Q&A while holding this debate. And I know people have made comments in the chat, which I want to apologise for not answering their chat questions, because I'm not skilled enough to be able to read and listen at the same time.
Well, some of the chat topics, if people want to stay on with us, I think we're all okay to carry on, aren't we? We're quite happy to grab it on for a bit longer. Okay. So time limit. Some of the questions at the top of the hour that people were, all comments that people were writing, were things about, it's all very well having us talking about raising standards, but actually one of the problems you have is the standards aren't being kept by perhaps some of the examiners and the DVSA themselves. That there is an inconsistency in standards check approaching. There is an inconsistency in the grades that are awarded. So how do people think about those kind of points that people are making? And also people lamenting the loss of role play, and that being a possibly better way of somebody demonstrating their skills than a live pupil. That's another comment that I can see that's in there.
The role play one's interesting. I put forward the idea, and I've put it forward tonight to a degree, but that part 3 shouldn't be a one-hit process, or standard check shouldn't be a one-hit process if there are problems. I think role play is a great vehicle the targeting. The examiner can target weaknesses. He can perceive weaknesses and hone in on those. Although they're generally, anybody who's spent a lot of their time sitting in the back observing and reporting on driving lessons will tell you that within 10 minutes you've got enough to fill a book quite often, and even with the weaknesses are fairly evident. So role play as part of the process, but not the finite process. I never thought it worked well as the finite process. I always thought it should be an intermediate step. But one of the problems there, though, is trainer role play, because trainers aren't trained in role play, and role play skills and some examiner role play skills are very, very poor. You know.
And also, there's a difference between examiner role play and training role play. Examiner role play is a test.
Yeah.
So that is and what happened was trainers copied examiner role play
and made it a test.
And made it a test all the time. Whereas they didn't understand low-level role play. And the problem is examiners don't understand low-level role play because they're only used to test-focused role play. So we end up back in fault identification, analysis and remedial action, not in all, but in some examiners' heads. And that's not the message from the top, by the way. The message from the top is they want role play, which will help develop, feedback, questioning, listening, those sort of. But the examiners down the bottom actually don't see that. They want that fault ID, analysis, remedial action. And there's a disjoint between the top and the bottom at the moment, which I think is getting sorted out.
Yeah. But we still see inconsistencies, and I often take that back to my meetings with DVSA, that we will still see inconsistencies, and we shouldn't. We really shouldn't. In such a, it should be more of a machine than it is. That and they will give you a great sense of discomfort sometimes when they say things like, "Well, we tend to let certain test centres do certain things." No, it's just not a case of just let unit, because that's not fair. That's not fair that other test centres aren't doing that, or other sets of examiners aren't working like that. It should be consistent, so it's fair.
We always seem to need to change training and testing in the same breath, in the same way. And I think role play is a good example of where that's not necessarily, the two aren't connected. So training using role play is brilliant. Testing using role play doesn't necessarily give the same result. And I remember Trevor Wedge saying, we never said who needed to identify, analyse and remedy. Yes. And that changed how I saw things. It really hit home with me that, we've made these assumptions. The problem is when you're using role play, you're not dealing with a three-dimensional character. So it's mention old men walking and you'll be all right kind of thing. You use a tagline and you'll get a response, and that's not human, with the greatest respect. But it is, I think, having that, having role play inside of training, absolutely, and it's great. I still hate doing it. It's not my go-to personally, unless unless I've exhausted other things. Because
I'll send you my 4-step role play guide.
Love to. There you go. You got to put out this tonight, Chris. I'm just going to go back to the chat again. Somebody made this comment, and it's a comment that's often made with relation to ADI performance and their actual responsibility for performance. Behaviours are set from a very young age. We get people at a almost fully formed stage. How do we, and then we're made responsible for changing 17 to, plus years of behaviour, and we then get blamed because we can't do that. I do accept that point to a huge degree. And that is a comment in itself on road safety education and how poor it is still. And I was annoyed today and made my annoyance clear. I sit on the Department of Transport's Road Safety Advisory Group, and they were talking about this road safety project that they've done, which is all about doing some research into what works in road safety guidance and what is good practice. And they've assembled a working group to actually develop new guidance for all road safety practitioners about how they should deliver road safety education. And my first question was, so who's the driver education bodies that sit on that working group? And there was a silence. And it's always useful when you get a silence, because you've caught them out with something. And I'm not deliberately trying to catch people out, but it is an opportunity to redress that balance. And as a result of that, we've now, with other bodies, been invited into that working group, because, as I pointed out, the people that have the most exposure to delivering road safety education in the most formative periods are driving instructors. So how you've got this far without having driving instructor representation is amazing. But going back to the behavioural change thing, it's that connectivity between wider road safety and what we're doing, and making sure we're more engaged, because there's a huge amount of work been done on behavioural change techniques. There's been research projects on it, there's ongoing research projects on it, but that useful output is not necessarily filtering through to ADIs and saying to them, we recognise it's a real slog to change behaviour that's been set over many years, but here's a toolbox of things that might help. This is what research-backed, evidence-based behavioural change techniques that may work. They're not getting any of that information.
No, Carly, I mean, you can't make someone change their behaviour, but people do change their behaviour over time if the seeds are sown and watered well. and what you were just discovering about, BCT, behavioural change techniques, if people have got some, they don't have to be complicated. And I think sometimes we make things complicated by going behavioural change techniques. And blimey, that's my brain gone. That's like university third. It's not. It's quite simple stuff, but it's sowing those seeds and actually changing the training. And I'm always, for me, training should be focused on the post-test environment. That's where training should be focused. It should not be focused on test, because what happens is that's the test and we're always training up to there. We should be training up to there.
Unfortunately, Graham, a lot of instructors out there who are training up to there don't realise that they're doing that. They believe that they're delivering life skills
absolutely
training. And they're doing it with, as I said, I alluded to earlier, they would feel horrified if they felt they weren't. And this, we're back to training.
We don't, all of us, we don't know what we don't know.
Absolutely.
And that's the problem.
Again, would beget the idea of graduated licensing that I would accept, because I'm not necessarily an advocate of graduated licensing as road safety has approached it. I like graduated licensing in aviation because they've got it and it works, which is once you do your private pilot license, you then have to do even more development after that based on experience and exposure. And then if you want to start flying people or goods around, you have to do even more training. You can't just do it. And I think we've touched upon tonight two things that would lead us to think that actually some forms of graduated licensing would be good for both the ADI, as in the ADI just doesn't qualify and is just left to fend for themselves. They should have some kind of mentoring program. There should be some revisiting of their standards 6 months, maybe in a year, and not to appraise them necessarily, to attack them or enforce upon them, actually to intervene and offer assistance and development. The engagement call is a step forward, but it's not doing that, is it? It's not giving them full feedback and full direction of where to go next. It's just somebody ringing you up and saying, you're going to have a standards check. You might learn some stuff about you. Think about it before you go to the test. And then that's it. There's nothing really after that point. So I think there definitely is a benefit of graduated licensing if it's built on those principles, offering more development opportunities, more mentoring, more fault remedying in terms of where people have struggled, and with actual learners as well, that there should be a trainer-led graduated licensing, because graduated licensing has been posed at the moment is all about slapping the brakes on and stopping people doing things, which would limit their exposure and then limit their ability to gather experience, which we've been told by research is vital to them being less risky. If you had graduated licensing, which was more akin to, you're going to do your license, but in 6 months' time, you're going to have a session with an AGI where they're looking at how you're driving now, offering advice, and there's going to be some remedial training or learning, and then we'll do that in another year's time. That might be a more acceptable and workable and pragmatic version of graduated licensing than you're not going to be allowed to drive at night, you can't drive your friends around.
Yeah, I think
a bit more carrot.
I think the fact is that we're all individual organisations. So, for example, we've got a great model of goal setting and risk management, which we'd love to share to ADIs across the UK, and we do that happily for nothing, because there's a short YouTube video on that. But also, then we've got it in our standards check workshops about how to develop that model. But there would have to be, and this won't happen, a universal agreement amongst us all to adopt a model for that. And I cannot for the life of me see us agreeing about having a universal model for goal setting and risk management, just as a starting place.
If we start with best practice, because I don't think that's anything that we share. I can't think of an example of best practice shared.
I think that's a key term. We had a comment earlier in the comments that setting a syllabus would be akin to lunacy. We're not for one moment suggesting that we are going to start prescribing how you run your training in your business. The idea of a syllabus was to offer some best practice, because whilst you might think you're doing it perfectly and have it down pat, there are others who struggle, or there are others who know how to do it but like to benchmark against what other people are doing as well. So I don't think we should be afraid of suggesting best practice syllabuses for trainer training, best practice syllabuses for post-test training and things like that. I think it's a paucity of these things which is the issue at the moment.
One of the problems is that we don't like to acknowledge that other people are better than us. I think the industry is really bad at that. Because we are all the gods in our own car. It's one of my favourite moments was when John made me very content in the fact I would be the biggest ego in the room. But it was so true about the industry that we're not good at that. We're not good at sitting around and going, do you know what, we're probably all really good at this, let's share some stuff. Start being whose is the biggest, or I think if we could move away from that towards sharing best practice, going, I've got a really good idea, and giving it away. And it's something, you know, I've worked on for a long time, but especially since COVID, I've had a view of I'm not going to be Gollum trying to hold on to stuff. I'm going to try and give away as much as I can.
Yeah.
And
Chris, if you don't give it away,
it's interesting because the reason is that, you know, as a business, if I give it all away, I'm no longer in business.
no,
So
no, it doesn't work that way. It doesn't work that way. If you don't give it away, they'll take it anyway. That's my first thing. But you've got to remember when you give it away that if it's a half decent idea, and not we sometimes have bad ideas and we sometimes have good ideas. As an element of my course, I've rewritten 3 times now. But you're the founder, you're the originator of that idea. Those who just take it are just copyists, and they're taking some bait. I mean, I could say, look, any trainers watching this tonight, put the biggest effort in what you do on route planning and on watching the learner. Okay, there you go. That's a big giveaway. Yeah, that'll make a massive difference, except it won't, because they won't know what the hell I'm talking about, or they might half guess it, or they won't understand, even if they understand the methods. So you know, I've given stuff away either deliberately or begrudgingly for years and years and years, and I just seem to go higher up the ladder as a result.
John, I mean, I agree, because that's our strategy as well. You know, the emails we write are always generally giving something away with something on the end of it, like, you know, if you want to know more about this,
Giving something away to commercial.
Absolutely, but the information is good, you know, and it's great information. And you know, consistently giving it. I mean, you know, during COVID, we give away so much stuff just to keep people involved in the industry. But it still remains for us to have a consensus as an industry, as associations, about what is the right route. You know, can we agree on this? You know, one thing that we can agree on. One thing would be good, and I'm not sure that that's possible.
Well, thanks, guys. Tonight, you know, in summation, I think there's been some really interesting discussions here, some really interesting suggestions by both delegates and panelists today. I think there is a community of feeling that there definitely is big change that we could make to the training process, and the training of trainers themselves as well, plus the post-test, licensing process in terms of CPD. We didn't get onto that particularly, but I do think we answered some questions in terms of what CPD is needed, because it's there in those gaps, isn't it? It's the gaps that we talked about in terms of what people aren't getting in an ADI qualification at the moment. It's got try and go and fill some of those once you're qualified, if you can as well. So I think, you know, it's probably a topic we'll revisit again, particularly as, you know, DVSA looks at how it's managing and qualifying trainers and their development as well. But thanks to John, Chris and Graham for joining us tonight and giving us their experienced insights and sharing their wisdom. We'll be looking at what topics we'll be covering in the next month. Please give us your thoughts either in the chat, or feel free to email us as well about what you think we should be covering next. Some things we'll be looking at which will be existing problems that we know they're already there. We can talk about them at length. Some stuff we might be a bit reactionary. We might react to a development that's happening and to change the subject because we want to be reactive as well. But all that remains for me to say to everybody is, you know, thanks for your attendance tonight and your inputs, and I wish you all a very good evening.
Thank you, everyone. Good night.
Thanks, everybody. Good night.
Guys. Bye-bye.